State legislators take a step toward harsher punishments for fentanyl users, in addition to dealers. Driving under the influence of fentanyl is now something the State Patrol is seeing. There's an election integrity problem inside a Republican-only vote, has a judge ordering a redo. Hey, what do you say we fix up a bunch of houses so that older Coloradans can stay in the homes they love? And the Rockies are going to become the visiting team at Coors for a few days.
Talk to me about what it's like when the Cubbies come to town.
It's a madhouse.
So root for the away team to drop as many dollars as possible while they're in Lodo, then get out. All that is next. The Colorado State Patrol says fentanyl is now showing up in the bloodstream of impaired drivers. They're training this week on how to catch those drivers before someone dies. Here's Anusha Roy.
For 15 years,
I have a passion for getting drunk drivers off the road.
Corporal Ivan Alvarado with CSP has been keeping a watchful eye on our roads.
There is not enough training for the officers to really go after everything.
He's in the latest group training to become a drug recognition expert. CDOT, a big force behind this training, reporting a 44% jump in fatal crashes linked to impaired driving since 2019. And it's not just drunk driving, but driving drunk and high. And when we asked the trainers,
have you found anybody with fentanyl in their system?
Yes.
The answer is yes. We see them stop on the side of the road and they're passed out in the driver's seat, kids in the back of the car.
Same goes for opioids.
Somebody that's basically falling asleep as while they're driving.
Law enforcement across the state is being taught to check blood pressure, pulse, body temperature.
Could be some type of drug, maybe like heroin, something that's slowing the body down.
The training could help officers recognize an overdose and use naloxone to reverse it. It also helps them figure out the difference between a medical emergency and impairment. Colorado was the third state in the country to sign up for this training, and it's now taking on even more importance with the number of people using drugs, overdosing, and dying.
There's more impaired drivers on the road than we really have the availability to enforce.
These officers will join the 1% of law enforcement with this kind of training spread out across the state.
It could look like anybody, our neighbor, that took a little bit more than what they should, or maybe even what they're prescribed, but those medications sometimes say, do not get behind the wheel.
The International Association of Police Chiefs is overseeing this training so that it's actually the same standard state to state. So if someone is pulled over for impaired driving, the officers today says that gets them off the road in that moment. But then being able to tell the difference between alcohol and drugs could actually be playing a role if that person goes to court. So there's that immediate effect of it, and then you've got the long-term effect of having this training.
So we know that fentanyl popped up on the East Coast a lot before it came here. It popped up in the Midwest. Now it's here. What are the experts saying about why the drug and other drugs are targeting Colorado now?
Yeah, so we asked both State Patrol, but we also asked drug addiction experts because I wanted to get a couple of different perspectives on that. And what we're hearing is that Colorado's had a history of drug use. If you have a younger population, a healthier population may not be as scared about some of the risks associated with it. But also we've got major highways cutting through Colorado, and that's not unique to just Colorado. I've seen that. I worked in San Antonio, saw the same thing. And so we are seeing that across the country as well.
All right, Anusha Roy, thank you very much. State legislators are now a step closer to making possession of fentanyl a felony. They amended a bill in committee today to make a possession of a gram or more a felony if prosecutors believe that the person knew that what they had was fentanyl. CBI testified today it does not have a lot of capacity right now to test how much fentanyl is in a drug. We asked Democratic House Speaker Alec Garnett about the potential cost of scaling up for that testing.
It's not driving CBI and forcing them to go in this direction. I just know that this is the direction that the state's going to go when it comes to testing these drugs because, again, synthetic opioids is the drug, the street drug of the future. More importantly, we need to make sure that
He had more thoughts, but whatever. Another amendment added today would make it a felony to possess a mixture of drugs that are found to be 60% or more fentanyl. That bill has a long way to go through legislature, so it could still see more changes. It heads to the Appropriations Committee next. We just learned that a woman in Greeley's been arrested after her husband died from a suspected fentanyl overdose, and police believe that she was the dealer. Weld County Drug Task Force says counterfeit pills were found in Amy Conradson's home. Her husband, Cody, was found unresponsive back on March 21st. She's charged with dealing fentanyl, and she's charged as a special offender because her home is so close to a school. Today, the University of Colorado's sole finalist for president began stakeholder meetings at every campus in the system. Interim President Todd Salomon was unanimously selected as the sole finalist by a vote of the regents yesterday after they privately considered 39 applicants. Last night here, I incorrectly said that both the deliberations and the vote were in executive session. The vote was public following the regents' private deliberations. Apologize for that error. An election integrity issue has been found in Colorado. A judge says that Republicans in El Paso County must redo their nominating process for a House district because they messed it up the first time. This is the nomination originally won by Carl Dent, who was forced out of the El Paso sheriff's race due to his felony conviction. But he got into a House race and ended up bouncing State Rep Mary Bradfield right off the ballot. Now a judge says an extra delegate should not have been allowed to vote. The GOP has to redo this by April 24th. Denver City Council is putting off a decision on banning concealed carry in city parks and buildings. One concern raised was whether concealed carry permit holders were really contributing to Denver's escalating crime these days. Another issue is whether that rule might disproportionately be used against people of color. Denver can consider a local rule on this because of a state law last year giving localities more control over the issue. Denver's proposal would not apply to the concealed carry of police officers, licensed security guards, and people in the military. Coloradans who have to leave their home for any reason these days are often having a difficult time finding a new place to live in this housing market. So I was thinking that we could do something to keep older Coloradans and Coloradans with disabilities in their homes by making the repairs that they need. That's why this week's Word of Thanks microgiving campaign supports the Home Modification and Repair Program through the nonprofit Brothers Redevelopment. Their teams take on about 300 of these projects a year, adding accessible features to homes like wheelchair ramps and roll-in showers, safety improvements like plumbing and electrical repairs, and they'll even do some exterior maintenance if that's needed. The nonprofit spends about $5,000 on each one of these home modification and repair projects. It's money well spent if it's what makes it so that somebody can stay in their home and be able to be safe and comfortable there. So that means that for every $5,000 that we're able to raise together, they can say yes to one more Coloradan who asks for help. So let's do this. Scan the QR code on the screen or text the word thanks to 303-871-1491 and I'll send you that link to donate. I will never ask you to give if I don't, so I'll match the first 50 donations of $5. These home modifications and repairs can prevent someone from being forced to leave a home they love. And the repairs can make sure those homes are safe. So let's see how many more projects we can add to this year's to-do list. Coors Field and Lodo are bracing for an annual migration of deep dish pizza lovers by giving them yet one more reason to spend some money there. We remember the Coloradan who told Houston of something very troubling on this day 52 years ago. And this trophy room on wheels could be legal or illegal depending on where they found those racks. It's Not How You Colorado, and it's next. Driving down the interstate hauling a load of antlers? That's not how you Colorado. Well, depending on where you got them. BJ was driving south down I-25 toward Hamden on Monday when he spotted a person hauling a trailer load of antlers. I mean, like a serious stack of antlers. BJ was saying, I thought you weren't supposed to pick those up. And BJ, you're right. Sort of. We recently discussed the rules around gathering shed antlers in Colorado on this program. You cannot collect any shed antlers that are found on public lands west of I-25 between the beginning of January and the end of April. The regulation is meant to protect big game from unnecessary human interaction at a time of year when they're really stressed out anyway. And you can get fined if you're caught with a shed antler. And there's a similar rule in Rocky Mountain National Park where the collection of antlers or any part of an animal from within the park is illegal. Now, there's no way of telling where the person driving that truckload got that enormous haul of antlers. So just from looking at the picture, we can't tell you if that's an illegal collection or not.
Another windy and chilly afternoon, although this evening the winds are starting to ease in some areas. We had a record cold low of 10 at DIA this morning. Highs this afternoon 20 degrees colder than average. The storm spinning to the north and east of us is pulling in some cold air and enough moisture for snow in the high country. Severe weather threat growing tonight from Memphis to Chicago. The winds are still pretty blustery, especially south and east of town, creating some areas of blowing snow. A winter weather advisory remains in effect for several inches of additional snow tonight, and then things really start to change as we move into the day tomorrow. A warmer, calmer day with a high near 60, mid-60s Friday. Sunshine close to 70 for Easter Sunday, and we could go even warmer the middle part of next week.
The state agency that regulates power companies wants additional information on how Xcel is protecting Coloradans during strong winds. The PUC, the Public Utilities Commission, oversees utility companies like Xcel. Today, they voted to hold a special meeting to learn what Xcel is doing in terms of mitigation in response to climate change and extreme weather.
Going forward, from our perspective, I'd like to better understand the wildfire mitigation plan and make sure we shouldn't be doing more, particularly on our distribution systems to limit fire risk.
Last month, we showed you this video from the day of the Marshall Fire with arcing power lines near where the fire started. Today, one of the PUC commissioners mentioned recent video of arcing power lines as one reason why they wanted to have this special meeting with Xcel. Today is the anniversary of a famous line said by a Coloradan, one that has been imprecisely quoted by everybody from Tom Hanks to anchors on SportsCenter.
Coors Field is a gem. It's one of the nicest ballparks in Major League Baseball.
Cubs fans in particular seem to love Coors. They make it their home field for 3 to 4 days every summer. Denver's Baseball Museum prepares for this year's takeover. Next. Are you ready for the invasion? Starting tomorrow, thousands of Italian beef-loving, old-style chugging, white and blue-clad people will descend upon Coors Field. It is the storming of the cicadas. Unlike their insect counterparts, the cicadas that appear once every 17 years, these Chicago transplants show up at least once a baseball season in Lodo. Our Mike Grady tells us about one of many efforts to part the cicadas from their money downtown.
Coors Field is a gem. It's one of the nicest ballparks in Major League Baseball.
How much does Coors being such a great park have to do with the influx of away team fans that we see here on Blake Street?
Everything. This is the National Ballpark Museum. We have really exhibits from the original 14 classic ballparks. I would think Larry Walker can maybe even hit the top deck from here.
Talk to me about what it's like when the Cubbies come to town.
It's a madhouse. We fare well when there's more popular teams here, and the Cubs are one of those.
Talk to me about these pins. What are these pins that we got right here?
So, no lights in Wrigley Field. This was a movement by the Citizens United for Baseball and Sunshine. They were doing their best to prevent night baseball at Wrigley. That's the last stadium to not feature lights. And these are authentic. These aren't newly made. These are from 1988, so they're vintage. But these were donated to the Baseball Museum for us to use them as fundraisers.
What's it like to have that influx of passionate people down here for a series like we're about to have?
The more baseball folks down here, the better. You know, while they're maybe not Rockies fans, if they love baseball, they're welcome here.
The Denver Bears at Merchants Park in 1929 were one of the first teams to hold night baseball as part of the Denver Post Tournament. Before we start to get the angry all-caps emails from the Chicago crowd, I should say that story was endorsed by our own resident cicada, next producer Kevin. He's a Cubs fan from Chicago. He goes to Cubs Rockies at Coors Field every year. Probably stands on the party deck, faces away from the field. Any hate mail about that story can be sent directly to him and not me for once. It's just kevin.larson@9news.com. He also happens to be, for the record, one of those heathens who puts ketchup on his hot dog instead of mustard like a real American. So be sure to mention that blasphemy to him in your email as well. On this day, 52 years ago, Houston had a problem. And it was a Coloradan in space who famously let them know about it. Denver Public Library reminded us that it was on this day in 1970 that Denver's own Jack Swigert contacted Mission Control and uttered those immortal words, "Houston, we've had a problem." The East High School grad was on board Apollo 13 when an oxygen tank exploded. Their mission to the moon was aborted and survival of the crew became the priority. They were eventually able to guide Apollo 13 back to Earth. Swigert received the Presidential Medal of Freedom for his efforts and 12 years later ran for Congress. And he won in Colorado's brand new 6th Congressional District. But he died before he could take office. Swigert was not even originally supposed to be on that mission. He was a backup who stepped into duty as the command module pilot because another astronaut was exposed to the measles. And yes, the actual line was in fact, "Houston, we've had a problem here," not "Houston, we have a problem." That was put together in the movie Apollo 13 because one of the movie's screenwriters thought that way sounded a bit more dramatic. Home repairs or modifications can keep older Coloradans and people with disabilities in their homes. There is a great team that's ready to do this work for free if we'll buy the materials. That's next. You see a detour in there to the right or you detour to the left? Unclear. Choose wisely. Unclear. Choose wisely.
Unclear. Choose wisely.
A few of you have recently asked if we could focus a Word of Thanks campaign on the needs of Colorado seniors. So you got it. The nonprofit Brothers Redevelopment has this wonderful home modification and repair program for Coloradans over the age of 60 and people with disabilities. Their teams will come in and install wheelchair ramps or widen doorways. They'll put in roll-under sinks or roll-in showers, whatever people need in order to be able to stay in their homes safely, long-term. And they tend to spend about $5,000 on each one of these projects. If you scan the QR code on your screen or text the word THANKS to 303-871-1491, I'll send you the link to join me in donating. They do a lot of wonderful work, and what they've told us is they have the teams to do it. They simply could use the funds to add more people to their to-do list. At last check, you would put 2 more projects on their to-do list and headed for a 3rd, so I appreciate that. A number of pieces of feedback tonight about Word of Thanks. Jeanette was saying, do you have a list of all of the nonprofits that Next has donated to? Would you post it and update it online with the amount raised for each? We absolutely do. Our digital producer, Aaron, has compiled that list, 2 years worth of it, as we come up on campaign number 100. Each week's cause, the link to the campaign, and the amount raised can be found on the Word of Thanks page in the next section of 9news.com. Bruce writes in to say about that truck full of antlers that he's pretty sure that it's an antler guy. There's an antler guy who travels west every year buying the shed antlers, which he then sells to artists and decorators. Bruce says he was in Wyoming last week. I have absolutely no idea if that's true, but that's a fun, harmless story about that truck full of antlers we saw. We'll see you next time.